So Gab, you're an alien. You're a legal alien. You're an Englishman in Japan.
I certainly am. That's right. Yeah.
I was really working hard on that one all day. That was. Are you turning Japanese?
I really think so.
I knew you were going to say that.
I'm so predictable. I have never had an original thought. I really think so. Yeah.
Meet Palle Bo, a digital nomad from Denmark on an epic journey around the world. At the age of 50, he made a bold decision. He sold everything, his house, his car, his furniture, and set out with a quest to visit every single country in the world, documenting everything along the way. This is the Radio Vagabond podcast.
In Japan, we're staying in Yokohama. It's very close to Tokyo, and we found this place on Airbnb. We're staying with an English guy. He's been living here in Japan for a number of years, and we share the apartment with him. We've got our own room, but we share the kitchen and the bathroom, and he's a super nice guy. He's got a young son with a Japanese woman from a previous marriage, and this young boy is absolutely fluent in both Japanese and English. Gabriel, or Gap as he calls himself, is a super nice guy.
So I came to Japan basically 12 years ago, almost 13 years ago now. And why? I'd lived in various countries and went back to England for a period. But basically, I got itchy feet again. And
in your life, you've been more out of England than inside, right?
Yeah, I left England in 1994, so that's, yeah. We won't go into the math exactly, but it is more, and it is, yes, since 1994, so that's 23 years. Yeah. In other countries. So I had a long period in LA, and then Spain and Portugal and Australia, and then Portugal again, and then back to England. But to your question, yeah, I got back to England, and I still had some travelling to do, itchy feet, so I had some connections in Japan at the time.
Okay.
So that's why, yeah.
So if your connections were at random in any other place in Cambodia, you might be living there.
I suppose that's true, isn't it? I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, I didn't. But you're right. Yeah, it could have been somewhere else.
So what kind of connection was it? A job opportunity, or what made?
I had a couple of friends and family who was based in Tokyo at the time, and so I did a teaching qualification, a TEFL, teaching as a foreign language, and that combined with the fact that Japan obviously is a huge market for English teachers, so it's a good place, regardless of anything else, to come and teach English because there's such a huge demand.
And they need it.
They certainly do. It's a job for life.
Yeah. So you must have had some funny encounters with the Japanese because they're different people.
Well, absolutely, and I think the large part of it is they're told that they're different. So even though every culture is different, they're quite proud of being different. So I think it becomes self-prophesizing. But absolutely, of course they are. And yeah, for one, I had a friend who was visiting, and he got lost. Not naturally, but he understandably got lost, and so was kind of panicked about how to get to my house from Yokohama Station. And in the centre of Yokohama Station, there's a huge sign, huge 8-foot letters saying information in English. And he saw it, and for him it was like an oasis in the desert. He thought, oh, great, help's a hand. So he ran towards the information desk and started just babbling in English, like, oh, I've got to get to Kamioka now, my friend, blah, blah, blah. And they're just staring at him and answering Japanese. No, we don't speak English here. And he's just bemused as to why they would be advertising information in huge letters in English to people who are absolutely cannot speak a word of English. Things like that I think are just funny.
Yeah.
I can almost without exception, I know if someone's going to understand me when I speak. Now, absolutely, my Japanese is not great at all.
Oh, I heard you. I think you're understating yourself.
No, but it's poor and it's littered with mistakes. But I can make myself understood. But there are times when, before you even open your mouth, the eyes of the Japanese person will glaze over, and you know that even if you spoke perfect Japanese, that they just would not understand you. So let me give you an example. I was in McDonald's pointing to a menu. This is a high context setting. I'm not going to walk into McDonald's and ask them for a critique of Freudian psychology. I'm going to walk into McDonald's and probably order some food, right? Yeah. So I'm pointing at set number 1, which is called Big Mac Set. Bigo Mako Seto.
Oh,
so I'm pointing.
Yeah, that's the Japanese way of saying it.
Right.
Bigo Mako.
Bigo Mako Seto, basically. Excuse any listeners that understand Japanese, excuse me with that one, but it's basically, right, Big Mac Seto. So there is not even a word of Japanese in there. Big Mac is American and set is churned into katakana with seto. So I'm not even saying one single word of Japanese. I'm just saying Big Mac Seto, and then I'm saying onegai shimasu, meaning please. I'm pointing to the Big Mac set. And the eyes were glazed over, and with a panic they said, "Chotomate kudasai," meaning please wait. And then I see them rushing to the back and having this guided this conversation with, basically there's a foreigner there, I can't understand a word he's saying. Will someone come and rescue me? And after this sort of, brief meeting, one of them, comes up the front and saying, yes. To which I said exactly the same thing back with, and sure enough, I got my Big Mac set. But you got to laugh, right?
I've noticed that whenever I'm in any shop, even though I don't understand and look as if someone who doesn't understand a word of Japanese, sure, they are talking all the time. What are they saying? Are they saying out loud what it is that they're scanning or...
It's funny you should say that. I call it a 30-word transaction. When you go and buy one thing from the convenience store, a minimum of 30 words will leave their mouth. It's like a running commentary. They'll pass it to you and they'll tell you what they've done, and then you give them 1,000 yen, send yen mas, and so there will be a running commentary of something which, and fair enough, they're doing it because they've been trained to do that, and that's they're being polite and doing their job very diligently. In England, I think they just shove it at you and grab your money and hand you money back without a single word, maybe.
Yeah.
But no, it's I call it a 30-word transaction.
That's good. But they're so polite and they bow, and
absolutely.
In England and Denmark, we would consider it good service if they didn't yell obscenities at us.
And absolutely, and absolute credit where it's due. One of our old friend of mine was in England, and the train, unsurprisingly, was late, and so she got a British rail guard and said in her English, "Excuse me, can you tell me when the train's going to arrive?" And he just looked at her, goes, "I don't know," and walked off as if she'd asked the most stupid question in the world. I don't know. Like she'd crazy, and just walked off.
And it was not another passenger. It was one of the people.
Oh no! It was a staff member of British Rail, and she'd asked, when do you think the train? When is it scheduled?
I don't know.
Looked at her like she's an idiot. I don't know. Just walked off, and I mean, she must have been just shell shocked by the total lack of giving her a toss, right?
This is the last night in Japan. It's 10 o'clock at night now, and tomorrow morning at 5:30 I will be leaving Japan, and you two girls sitting beside me will be leaving the day after. So are you getting ready that I will abandon you in Japan?
Yeah. We'll probably survive.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So I think it's a good time to sort of recap what our impression of Tokyo. We'll focus on Tokyo. So we each prepared a top 3 list of highlights from Tokyo. So I think you should begin, Clara.
My
start with number 3.
Yeah. Number 3 for me was Hachiko, which was this dog statue. And I know that absolutely this is not on any of your lists, because it was mostly me who was really excited about it. But I just really, really love that story, and I've been wanting to see that statue since I heard the story.
Mm-hmm. We're at Shibuya Station. We just got off the train, and my youngest daughter Clara told me that we needed to go to this place because this is the highlight. And here it is. There's a small statue of a dog. And what's the deal with the dog?
Well, I believe it's called Hachiko, and it's this story, a true story about a dog that each day followed its owner to the subway station and waited for him there while he was at work. And then one day the man, he died, and the dog kept on waiting until the dog died itself. So now it's become this symbol of loyalty.
And they raised the statue.
Yeah.
So this was obviously very important for you to...
Very, very important.
I'm glad we went, and in fact, the dog is here, and in between its legs, there's a cat resting underneath the dog. I will post a picture on it on the radiovagabond.com. And right next to it is this. I think it's one of the world's, if not the world's, most busy intersection with a lot of people crossing it when the lights turn green from all sides, and it looks amazing from a little bit from above. But now we're going to be crossing it ourselves. This building is on a quiet street, I would say, in a residential area, and beside there's an even more quiet street. I would say maybe once an hour, maybe once a half hour, a car comes by. And today I've been noticing they're doing some construction work, and half of this tiny street is blocked. And then there are 2 traffic guards standing all day, and I've seen them all day. They just stand there, and they even wore headsets so they could communicate to each other. Right. They're standing 10 meters apart, and what the hell is going on? Human traffic lights. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? One of the there wasn't so much traffic to. It's just a job for life. It's giving people a job, keeping up the employment numbers. You could say it's social responsibility of giving employment to people. Wherein I'm sure in ruthless capitalism we would just obviously say, why on earth are we paying someone to stand there when we can just stick down a traffic light, which is exactly what we would do. So I mean, I thought the first thing when I first ever saw those, what on earth is going on? The traffic light's broken. Is there a power cut? Why is he standing there? Nope, there's a job for life, which is comical by many Western standards. But then on the other hand, the guy's got a job. He may not have a job if it wasn't for that. So. But efficient it ain't, obviously. But it's not supposed to be. I would think that the guys standing there 8 hours straight would think, what am I doing here? This is so unnecessary. Absolutely. How would you justify your existence in a way in terms of standing there doing a job that you must be aware can be done by 3 separate lights of red, amber and green? This is just a personal thing, of course, but I don't think that type of critical thinking or actually challenging what's done exists in the same way in many Asian countries and in Japan, maybe in particular. People, they are a country that does like to follow protocol and follow rules and to do what your boss says. For me, I mean, I'd last 5 minutes. I mean, I can't imagine. Can't imagine it. But if you look at the guys that do it, they're often sort of borderline retirement age people. There might not be a particular job for them to do, and I think this is again just projection. But I think in their minds they would think they were doing a service, and they'll probably try and be the best human traffic lights they could possibly be. They are taking their job very seriously, so earnestly. No matter what they do. Which, again, you just wouldn't get that in most parts of England. People who, let's face it, are on a minimum wage job, but they will do it, absolutely diligently, without, taking any time to joke or lark around or take a break. They'll just do it and do it to the best of their ability, whatever it is. That's pretty good in many ways, right?
It's not on my list. It didn't make
No,
it into my top 3. What about you, Amanda?
I definitely liked it, but it's not on my top 3.
It's not on your top 3. No. Yeah. Okay. My number 3 would be Golden Guy. The district of Golden Guy. We were there at night. It's a place where they have the famous robot restaurant, which is a show that we didn't go in to see. We've seen some YouTube videos from it, and it looks fun, but it was also quite expensive to go in there, and we didn't book tickets in advance, but we saw it from outside. But the whole neighborhood, the whole district of Golden Guy is famous for tiny bars, and especially at nighttime, there's a feel to it, and I like that area, so that's my number 3.
Yeah, I really like that as well.
Is it on any of your lists?
No.
Actually, I forgot about it, but I really liked it as well. My number 3 is the theme cafes.
The theme cafes.
The theme cafes. We visited both a dog cafe and a cat cafe. So I really like those, and I've heard lots of good stuff about the other ones, like maid cafes, and as you mentioned, the robot.
Yeah. Is dog or cat cafe on your list?
Yeah, that is on my list, but we'll get to that.
Okay. Gab, what's the best part about living in Japan?
Well, for me, one of the things I particularly love is, we've talked about this, is onsen. I think anything where you can burn so few calories and be so relaxed.
You need to explain what it is.
So Japan is a volcanic group of islands, and has many natural hot springs. So there's natural mineral water coming out of the ground, which is beautiful temperature. So there are 2 types in Japan. There's an onsen, which is completely natural water and naturally heated. And then in areas where there might not be a natural onsen, there's a thing called sento, which is a public bath. And they often import the water from onsen areas, but they heat it themselves in situ. So I mean, I just absolutely love, on my day off to go with my son and have a nice lunch. Like last Sunday, went to sushi, which is great, the kaiten sushi. So it's a conveyor belt sushi, which is very, very reasonable. Another myth about Japan is how expensive it is. I mean, we had a great lunch, very, very reasonable, and then went to an onsen. So things like that I still love, even after 12 years. It doesn't get old at all. I love it.
And you just mentioned you have a son, Anthony, a wonderful 7-year-old boy.
Thank you. That's very nice. Thank you.
And his English is absolutely perfect, but his Japanese is just as perfect, right?
Oh, Japanese is his first language. Yeah. His mum's Japanese. He goes to Japanese school Monday to Friday. He's been through the Japanese nursery system. He dreams in Japanese. It's his mother tongue. But no, I'm very, very proud of him. His English is native.
He speaks he even speaks with a specific English dialect.
Oh, did you notice? Yeah, I'm proud of that.
So that's also why you're still here.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
One of the reasons.
Yeah,
Onsen and Anthony.
not in that order, Anthony. If you're ever listening to this in the future. Yeah, absolutely. I made a very clear choice. Didn't work out with his mum, but that's fine. These things happen all the time, all over the world.
I've tried it twice.
Yeah, who's winning? But no, I made a very clear choice that I wanted to be active in his life, and yeah, it's wonderful. We've got so far so good, great relationship, and yeah, I mean, one of the sort of, as we mentioned before, the silver lining of that situation is that he's growing up in a Japanese home with his mum, but in an English home with me, which I strongly believe, is helped him with his English, because a lot of children grow up in a mixed marriage home and might have less than perfect Japanese from one partner and less than perfect English from another partner, which is very natural, of course. Grow up with sort of without clear models of either language in some ways. Whereas I've never spoken a single word of Japanese to him. Not that I wouldn't, but I wanted him from day one to know that to speak English to Daddy, you speak Japanese to Mummy. Very simple. Seems to be working. I think he's balanced and happy, and as you say, he's bilingual basically, so which is wonderful. Wonderful.
And he's here almost every weekend.
Absolutely. So yeah, typically see him Wednesday nights for karate, and then Friday night or Saturday we go to international school where I work on Saturdays, called Laurus International School. He comes with me, and then Saturday nights and Sunday, and his mum picks him up on Sunday. So yeah, I mean that's one thing where I'm absolutely blessed. It's been work, but I'm absolutely blessed. Japan has a less than perfect track record of parental access. Yeah, it's up until recently it's been a black hole for parental abduction. Japan signed the Hague Convention about 20 years ago, but only ratified it basically 2 years ago. And the Hague Convention means that the parents have access, and that one parent can't move more than X amount of kilometres from the established home of the child without permission. So that's another whole thing. But yeah, I'm doing great on that front. It's very, very lucky.
And in a couple of years, you're taking him to English school in England.
Absolutely, that's the plan. Every parent has the sovereign right of choosing with their child what education they think is best for them. As I've said, in the past, if a child's mum and dad are both Japanese and they have no particular desire to live in another country and they anticipate themselves and their family living and working in Japan, absolutely natural that you would go through the Japanese education system because it's designed for that purpose. However, my son is Japanese and English and Japanese. He should be very proud of both of those parts of who he is. And by that being said, I honestly feel that the best thing I can do for my son is give him choices, and I believe that if he's educated up until 9 or 10 in Japan, 9, maybe 9 at the latest, he'll be. Japan has 3 written languages: katakana, hiragana, katakana, and kanji. He's already able to write and understand hiragana. His katakana is essentially there as well, and he'll be learning kanji quite soon. So he'll be literate in Japanese. And then if he's educated in England, when it comes time for him to decide where he wants to live or work, he'll have 2 real choices available for him, and also the rest of the world. I mean, and being bilingual in Japanese and English, with an English, hopefully a decent education behind him, whatever he chooses to do, I think I've given him more rather than less choices. But there's no right or wrong. It's every family has their own things they want to do.
Yeah. It's going to be so good for him. You got any plans of how long he's going to stay in England, or you're going to stay?
I would, who knows the future, but it's my definite hope that he's educated in England up until 16, and then when he goes on to further education, that could be in England or Japan or wherever, and if university is what he's going to be doing, then wherever he wants to do that. It's not England. It's not England because I'm English. I'd be equally happy if he was educated in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Scandinavia,
Denmark.
Absolutely. No, I'm absolutely serious. If that was the compromise, I'd move to Denmark very happily, because what I've said stands. He'll have more choices rather than less, and the Japanese education system hasn't changed. Certainly in 50 years. I mean, I spent 9 years working at a very esteemed private junior and senior high school, 3rd ranking in the area, and my resources were a chalkboard and chalk. There were no computers in the classroom, no tablets, no computer, no internet. There were just textbooks and a chalkboard and that hasn't changed. That's Victorian English. It's, 44 people in rows, 44 boys in rows, opening up a textbook, and the teacher lecturing 12-year-old boys from the front with a piece of chalk in his hand.
I thought it was so electronic.
It's the huge myth about Japan. If you did word association with most people and you asked them what they thought about Japan, you'd probably get sushi, sashimi, sumo, geisha, high tech, robots.
Yeah.
Well, Japan's had some amazing technical things. The Shinkansen, was, and still is an incredible.
The high-speed bullet.
The high-speed bullet train, launched in '66 for the Tokyo Olympics. Still still the world class, better than we've got in England after all these years. So things like that, absolutely. But when it comes to day-to-day life, this is a country that still uses faxes. It's a country that it certainly does. It's a country that prints out emails, so the boss doesn't have to read them on the computer, can read them on a piece of paper in front of them. I mean, there are utterly things that just people just don't expect, and also they don't necessarily see them, because if you're told that Japan is high tech and it's this and this and this, then it alters your perception. But if you look at many things, I don't see so much that's high tech around. I don't know. What do you think? What have you seen that's really, really high tech and cutting edge?
Well, I've seen some of the robots as well, and I just assumed that it was the school system would be with iPads and computers and stuff like that.
Absolutely not at all. No. And bear in mind, the school I taught in was a private school. Yeah. The public schools, in public in the American sense of the word, I mean the free schools, have even less than we had. Yeah. Ours was, for Japan, an expensive, all-boys, fee-paying school that had the Kanagawa third ranking in terms of the universities it got the kids to, Kyoto, Tokyo, etc.
Yeah.
And
so you still teach? Where do you teach now? Not the private school?
No, this year I'm now going full time at Laurus International School, which is in Tokyo and Shirakanadai. It's Japan's first STEM school, so we have STEM classes, ICT, programming. But that's a Western education and an international school. Yeah,
how does the classroom look there? Are you standing chalk in hand?
Certainly not. We do have robots, although just varying degrees of success at the moment. But
robots teaching.
Well, put me out of a job.
Yeah. Wow.
So there are some excellent international schools in Japan, as there are in every capital city. But if you look at the schools up and down the country, you will see rows of seats with textbooks in them and a chalkboard at the front of the classroom, and a teacher delivering lecture-style lessons to children who just sit attentively taking notes. Now, I don't think, in my opinion, 12-year-old children should be sitting in a lecture. I think they should be actively learning for themselves. Probably anyway. That's a whole different thing. But yeah.
You just mentioned the Olympics in the 60s, was it?
66, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And now it's coming back. The next Olympics is here in Tokyo in 2020. Has that changed anything, or do you think there's going to be changes in order to make the country ready to be the host?
In terms of
logistic, roads, buildings, and
I don't know more than most people that live here. I mean, they're building underway. I think it's at the moment it's slightly behind schedule, but I'm sure that's normal for any country preparing for Olympics. I'm sure the Japanese do a great job of hosting. Of course, the campaign was won by calling Japan Safe Hands. That's how they won the bid for the 2020 Olympics. Safe Hands. I think I don't remember the other contender countries, but Japan won basically on saying, you can trust us. You're in safe hands. We'll deliver you a good Olympics, and I'm sure they will. I'm sure they'll do a fantastic Olympics. There's people now talking about getting people's English up and ready for the 2020 Olympics. Elementary schools now are increasing the amount of English that they teach. But I've been here for, as I said, 12, 13 years. I've heard that before, but we'll see what happens. But definitely, there is people are looking forward to it, and planning for it. Definitely, yeah.
Gab, I have the feeling we could talk for a very long time, but we better wrap it up now. Again, thank you so much for hosting us, and I feel that I've not only had a nice place to stay for the last 2 weeks, but I also gained a new friend.
Absolutely.
And
me too, absolutely, yeah.
If anyone else listening wants to stay at Gab's place, I will put a link in the show notes so you can check it out. Cheers.
Cheers, it's been an absolute pleasure, thank you.
Okay, Clara, your number 2.
My number 2 is Takeshita. I believe that's how it's pronounced. I went into
Takeshita.
Takeshita. Takeshita. That's at least what Google Translate said.
Uh-huh.
But it's the street in Hachiko, which is like it's very touristy, and it's clear that it's a very like famous place, that there's a lot of tourist traps, I guess. But I really love the atmosphere. I love the shops. There were a lot of we got frozen popcorn, which is a weird thing, but was really delicious. And there was an anime shop, which I loved. I really enjoyed that.
And that was where we found the cat cafe as well.
Yeah.
Takeshita Street is in this Harajuku district, and the whole district, I really liked it as well. That could easily have made it into my top 3. Well, but no, my number 2 was the Ginza district, especially because we were there on a Saturday where they close it for cars and traffic. So the whole street was they call it pedestrian paradise, and they do it every weekend, Saturdays and Sundays and holidays, and it's closed for traffic, and a lot of big shops, but the whole feel of this big wide street was just people walking around. Someone even put chairs out, and that was my number 2.
It's not on my list, but I definitely love that as well. And also, that's where we found the 2 huge stationery stores. That was in Ginza.
And speaking of, that's my number 2, or at least like the stationery store Itoya, I think it's called. Was it?
In fact, there are 2 stores.
2 stores, 11 floors of just stationery and art. And I don't know. It was my.
You're both very very artistic, and you really enjoy that. So maybe that's not for everybody, but I really liked it too. Yeah.
If you in any way like stationery or like just art supplies, you'd love it.
It's an art supply paradise, really.
Yeah. So I like that shop. And then I also like the store called Beams. I think it's maybe a flagship store. I read somewhere, but I'm not sure.
What was it about Beams that you liked?
The thing about both Beams and this Itoya store is that you could really see this essence of the Japanese, like the mix of this cuteness and weirdness and just really good handcrafted stuff, and I don't know. That's really nice to see.
Yeah. So your number 2 is what?
Just shopping. but and then those.
You couldn't really decide, could you?
No, I just really like those 2, but the whole Ginza area where it is just really nice.
Okay, now we're into the number 1. Your favorite thing, Clara. Drum roll.
Well, I mean, we've already talked about this, and that
I have an idea what it is.
Yeah, it's the dog cafe, because it was like 5 minutes after we walked in, this tiny dog, it just walked into my lap and it fell asleep. It was like a little poodle. It was so adorable, and it just fell asleep and it just stayed there, and my heart it could not handle it. It was so adorable, and just they were all amazing, and I wanted to cry.
Yeah. They were sweet. I think we've talked enough about dogs. Okay, since I'm the guy holding the microphone, I'm going to allow you, Amanda, to give your number one before I give mine.
Okay, so my number one is actually the Ueno area, where we went to a park. You know, the place where there was a guy feeding birds. And the reason why I really like that, and also, for example, your Yogi Park, is because there's so many of these cherry blossom trees and the whole area with street food booths and, like, I don't know, there's just a really nice atmosphere in the park, so I really like that.
Wow, you've almost taken my number one. My number one is being here right now. Us being so lucky that we were here during cherry blossom season, and the whole of Japan is just so beautiful in late March, early April, and it's been amazing, I think.
Yeah, I think if you're going to visit Japan and you don't know when, just really try to see if you can do it during the cherry blossom season. Because it's just so beautiful.
Yeah. One of the things that almost made it to my list, but didn't, was the National Arts Center, where we saw the exhibit of this great Japanese artist Yayoi Kazuma and the woman with the pink hair. That was interesting as well. But there's so much about Tokyo and Japan that I like. So
yeah.
Just also, I really liked. We went to the top of Tokyo Plaza. There's a rooftop garden there. It's very interesting. A good alternative to, you know, for example, visiting some of what is it called, the sky.
The tower.
Yeah, the towers where you need to pay entrance. You could see all over Tokyo and it's completely free. You can get a cup of coffee there, and it's really
not completely free.
Yeah, but it was free if you didn't buy anything.
So all in all, impressions of Tokyo.
I'll be back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not done with Japan.
No.
And now I'm leaving my daughters. They're leaving Japan to go back to Denmark a day after me. But tomorrow morning I'm leaving for Canada. I've been asked to do a keynote at a conference in Toronto, and I'm so looking forward to that. My name is Palabo, and I gotta keep moving. See ya.